The eraser tool is very similar to both the pencil and the paintbrush tool in GIMP, but instead of painting new colors onto the canvas, it actually erases part of the canvas. So let's take a look at how it works. It's considered one of the paint tools, so it's got this mode option up here, but it's grayed out because we actually can't use it with the eraser tool. So instead, the first option will be the opacity. This is simply how much we erase. If we have it set to 100% and we draw across our image, it will erase completely everything that it comes across. If we undo that and we set it down to a lower percentage, it will only start to erase it and fade it out. Okay, setting that back up, we've got the brush stroke here. Just like with the pencil and pen, you can choose the shape of the brush. It's definitely acts more like the paintbrush by default in that it has soft edges. So if you choose a brush with a soft edge, it will apply those soft edges to where it erases. We can also, as covered in some of the other videos, you can build your own paintbrushes. You can refer to the pencil and paintbrush tool to see how that's done. We've got the size option here, which basically just controls how big the brush is, the eraser brush is. And we can use these yellow arrows to the next to the sliders to reset them to their default values. We also have the aspect ratio. So instead of a circle, if we change the aspect ratio, we can make it more of an oval. And we can adjust the angle if we want to make that oval at a bit of an angle. So we can just undo those and reset those to the default values. The eraser tool also allows you to use dynamics. This basically tells GIMP how the brush should be interpreted based on the method in which it is created. So, for example, if you set it to be speed dependent, you might have the size of the brush dependent on the speed that you are drawing across it, or other things like that. This option is a little more appropriate for the paintbrush and pencil tools, so you can refer to them if you'd like to know more about how it works, but it's an interesting option to play around with. Then we've got this apply jitter option. Let me just turn this off again. We've got this apply jitter option. This adds a little bit of randomness to the lines that you're drawing. So if we were to draw across, well, that doesn't show it so well, but if we were to turn this up a bit, you would see that it creates quite a bit of speckliness. So somewhere in between, I guess, would be a little bit more appropriate. So maybe in this case, we try 1.5, and that's still pretty speckly, but it creates a little more randomness to the lines that you're drawing. I'll just undo these. Then we've got the smooth stroke option. This opens up two sliders that work complementary to one another, so that instead of applying a jittery stroke, if this is off and my hand's a little jittery on the mouse, you'll see that I've got a pretty jittery line there. But if I were to undo that and apply the smooth stroke and I were to turn these up quite a bit, despite how jittery my hand is, the line comes out smooth. You can't see exactly how jittery I was drawing with the mouse, but I can assure you it was pretty jittery, and this line still came out relatively smooth. So you can play with those to help smooth out your lines. This works especially well in conjunction with the mouse. Then we have incremental. This works in conjunction with the opacity meter. If it's set to 100, the incremental doesn't do anything. But if we were to turn this down, normally with incremental off, if we are erasing, no matter how many times we go over the same area, if we haven't let our finger off the mouse, it won't change the opacity, the amount that is erased. But if we were to undo that and add incremental, you'll see that as we go, it erases more and more. And in fact, this is more apparent the lower the opacity is. So if you set the opacity pretty low and we just draw across it, you'll see it leaves just a very faint trail. But if we were to just continue to circle around, it slowly darkens in without ever having to take my finger off the mouse. Then we've got a hard edge. This basically just gives your brush a nice hard edge, so it will function more like the pencil tool than the paintbrush tool. So even though I've got a brush selected with a nice soft edge, if I've got the hard edge option selected, it will make, oh, let me turn the opacity up a little so you can see it better. It'll make a nice hard edge here. And finally, we have anti-erase. With anti-erase, you can basically undo an an erase mark that you have made with the eraser. So I've erased this and I've decided that I didn't want it to erase quite that high. We can just draw back over it and it will fill it back in with what had previously been there prior to erasing. These are the basics of the erase tool. The erase tool also works well in conjunction with the selection tools. So for example, if I wanted to erase a very specific part of my canvas, I might draw out a selection over just this green rectangle here. And then I can go to the eraser, and then it will only erase, we'll turn off the anti-erase, it will only erase what's within the selection and nothing else on this layer. So this is another good combination you can use with the eraser tool. So the eraser tool is a good way to get rid of things that you no longer want and to clean up edges of objects. So it's pretty much just like the paintbrush and pencil tools, but it removes things instead of adding them.